What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker, your host. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing the podcast. We are brought to you guys today by our advertisers. Our advertisers are Bell to Bell Fitness, Shea Tor, a realtor out in Arizona, former Bruin alum, and my main man Howard Chang, a realtor right here in Los Angeles. Let's go through them, guys. Bell to Bell Fitness is a boxing gym on the West Coast used by their FIT acronym, Fight Inspired Training. My main man, Tony Gonzalez, was the boxing coach for UCLA for over 10 years. He has built this gym on the West Side to learn how to boxing, stay in shape, and get you all the essentials you need to become somebody that is obsessed with boxing and fitness. Make sure to check it out. Go into Bell to Bell Fitness and say you heard about it from the Bruin Bible, and you're going to get a free session with Tony Gonzalez. So make sure to check that out. Shea Tor, my main man. Shea Tor is a licensed real estate agent in Arizona and a lifelong Bruin. He's a current Wooden Athletic Fund donor and football season ticket holder. When not selling houses or going to UCLA games, he loves to travel the country, checking out different arenas, ballparks, and stadiums. If you're looking to make the move to Arizona or know someone who is, please reach out to our loyal friend, Mr. Shea Tor. His phone number is 602-487-3975. Once again, his number is 602-487-3975. Make sure to check that out. And then the local realtor we got out here, Howard Chang. Howard Chang is a local realtor with the Serene team at eXp Realty. Their team has an office right here in Culver City, though they help clients buy and sell homes all over the LA County and the surrounding areas. Howard and his team do a ton of business and are super in tune with the market, knowing winning strategies to give their clients a competitive advantage. Have amazing vendor referrals, are a one-stop shop for anything real estate, and just provide a ton of value for their clients. Howard and his partner, Kyle Draper, are UCLA alums and a huge fans of the UCLA football and basketball programs. You will often see them at games, tailgating and networking, and staying involved with the UCLA alumni community. They would love to help any fellow alumni with accomplishing their real estate goals. So if you guys have any real estate needs in the LA area, look no further. Howard is your guy. All right, guys, we're going to go into the episode. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. What is up, UCLA Bruin fan base? Are you guys kidding me? What a victory last night. 20-17 over the Iowa Hawkeyes in a night game, a Friday night lights game at the Rose Bowl. Madman and I were in attendance. We got in late, so I'm going to take some credit on this one. We're down 10-0. Traffic was just insane from the west side. I was waiting to kind of hear from Madman. He sends me the ticket. We get in. It's 10-0 at that point. And then the second we linked up, everything switched for the Bruins. So we're going to take some credit on that. But no, in all seriousness, all credit out to the UCLA Bruins. They balled out. And there's so many just different guys that made this victory happen for UCLA and, position groups. So we're going to dive into all of it today. First and foremost, Madman, how are we feeling about our Friday night victory? I mean, this is the win to me that solidified we can be a serious team in the Big Ten if we put all the right things together for the UCLA football program.
Well, I mean, it's just remarkable. We have to sort of take a step back and appreciate what this run is so far and what it can mean moving forward. Obviously, when you look at it sort of from a quantitative standpoint on paper, this team is now in a position, they're 60% to their goal. They were sitting at 1-5. They got 3 wins, 3 out of 5 now. All they got to go is 2-1 to make that incredible bowl appearance, which I think is going to be so vital to Deshaun Foster's sort of lineage of success moving forward. So obviously, we look at this third consecutive win over a Big Ten opponent, third consecutive game where they were the underdog, third consecutive game where really I think the score doesn't indicate the level of dominance. I mean, this has been three consecutive now comprehensive victories, and we'll get into all of the nuts and bolts. But Will, I think taking a step back and understanding and appreciating this team in a very different way, I think we're all going to look back on this 2024 version of the UCLA Bruins and think of them in a very special place in our hearts, because contextually, in this new world of college football, of NIL and transfer portal and intentionally redshirting and everything being so transactional, how many teams in the country will, sitting at 1-5, would their key players would say, you know what, it's time for me to now start thinking about my next steps, whether that next steps is getting ready for the NFL, whether that's next steps is going to another university, whether those next steps are changing positions, all of the above, or focusing on off the field endeavors. This group has stayed so locked in together. The enthusiasm is so off the charts. The team chemistry, the team culture, what they have built here has been so special in the context of a sport that's getting further and further away from it. I mean, think about how excited this team is. That was a 3-5 football team last night. And they're, after every big play, the way they were engaging with the crowd, the way they were engaging with each other, you would have thought, Will, that it was a Big Ten championship game or it was a college football playoff game. And so the fact that this team is off the mat from 1-5 to 4-5 and playing some of the best football across the Big Ten from where they were to where they are now, that to me, Will, above even the numbers, is what is so special about this team. And if they can finish the job and get to a bowl game and succeed, my God, we're going to think of this team over the course of the last 25 or 30 years in UCLA football history as one that was A, extremely special given the context that they were in, and B, could perhaps be the team that puts Deshaun Foster's tenure on the map and really turns the page to a new chapter of success in UCLA football.
Huge victory, man. And just so excited at the progress because, I mathematically took us out of a bowl game, when we lost to Minnesota in that close contest, 1-5 at that point. You're kind of just reading the room, so to speak. And then this little run starts. Rutgers, I kind of expected we'd have a shot in that game. We get it done. As soon as we beat Nebraska, my mind starts to kind of light up. And then you put those pieces together against Iowa, a really complete football team. Kirk Ferentz has a long tenured, success level within the Big Ten. These are like really good coaches they're beating, Matt Rule and Kirk Ferentz. So like the fact that I've seen this back-to-back weeks, this team's hot right now and good things are happening for this UCLA Bruins team. It's really, really exciting to see what is kind of transpiring for everything going on with UCLA. And guys, we have to start in so many different areas. There's so many players we got to get to. But I think the one place we have to start, Madman, if you would have told me before the game that UCLA, their rushing offense would not only get going, but they would outrush the Big Ten rushing team leader in Iowa, 211 to 80 yards, I wouldn't have believed you guys. This is not an opinion. This was a fact. Coming into this game, we were statistically, there's 134 teams in college football. We were ranked 134 out of 134 in rushing yards per game. And boy, did we open up the lanes for the UCLA Bruins last night. My God, TJ Harden got it going. His first 100-yard game of the season. Jalen Berger, who we didn't really see a lot of in the second half, was a huge part of us kind of getting back into the game in the first half down 10-0. I mean, everyone was getting done. Keegan Jones, you remember that reverse play that got us the first down deep in the red zone. What a run that was. I mean, he got stifled twice behind the line of scrimmage and just kept that momentum moving forward. We had mastered pass blocking against Nebraska last week. It looked like we really finally mastered the last element of the offensive line to be a successful unit in the run blocking game. I'm stunned at what we saw from this run game yesterday, Madman. Talk to me in great lengths about what this means against an Iowa team that had one of the best rush defenses in the country this year. It's unbelievable.
No, Will, I mean, I'll do you one better there. I mean, 211 to 80, as you mentioned. I mean, that's more than 2.5 times the total of Iowa. And what if I told you all of that, Will, without the starting left tackle? I mean, Prongos, didn't even play. And arguably UCLA's most athletic offensive lineman on Garbers' blind side. I mean, it was absolutely remarkable, Will. And I think so much credit needs to be going to Castillo in terms of his ability to develop these guys and have them believe. And they're starting to get into a rhythm. And I think the continuity of knowing who your five is going to be. Obviously, Prongos got hurt, but all the other four guys knew what their positions and their roles were. And I think that continuity breeds that confidence. But I think, Will, there was a couple of elements there. One was the development of the offensive line itself. The other, I think we have to give credit here to Eric Bieniemy in terms of how he schemed this game up. If you recall, Will, I think there was a very subtle adjustment that was made last night that I think really took Iowa off balance. And what that was is the amount of time that Ethan Garbers was under center for these run plays. Yeah. If you recall, Will, this has been an exclusively shotgun-based offense over the first, 2/3 of the season. And what you saw last night was Garbers was probably in shotgun about 40% of the time. He was under center about 60% of the time. And they really started mastering that outside zone concept. If you recall, Will, setting a wide receiver in motion, going in the opposite direction of where the linemen were actually going to block and create a running lane in that weak side. And it did, I think, a couple of things. It created some east-west confusion for Iowa, particularly with those linebackers. They didn't really have kind of that base center of gravity. They were like kind of shifting to one side, given the motion of the receiver, and then having to sort of adjust to the other side because the run game was going in the different direction, really seemed to put Iowa on their heels and give UCLA a very significant advantage to the tune, Will, as you discussed. 20 carries, 125 yards for TJ, 7 carries, 38 yards for Keegan, 6 carries, 30 yards for Berger. I mean, the 211 yards even included some victory formation, elements there on the end. So the yards per carry were even greater than the 211. But that was, to me, it was so interesting. And what it did, Will, to your point, is it then the counter to that was a couple things you could do. You could go play action, which Garbers did a few times. And then what it also did is it really opened up that jet sweep game, right? Because when you leverage that motion, man, and sometimes it was Loya, sometimes it was Gilmer, and then sometimes it was Keegan. And then when it was Keegan, they really were able to leverage that jet sweep game. So I thought that was such a subtle move, and I think it totally caught Iowa off balance because Iowa was so used to a UCLA team that was predominantly in shotgun. And we talked about it, Will. There was a couple of these draw plays that we've been running. Things are opening up, but sometimes they're a little bit slower developing. Garbs is kind of faking the throw and then handing it off. And that sort of creates movement with the linebackers. But oftentimes what it does is it reduces the amount of time, for the line to sort of hold up to be able to deal with the rush. I think that adjustment of going straight under center and going opposite the formation and really going outside zone read really opened things up. Because also, Will, I think it sets up TJ for his running style. TJ is a guy, Will, and you and I have known this for a couple of years now. He likes to make that first cut and then likes to make that second cut. And sometimes when you get the ball in shotgun, you're seeing everything, but you're kind of flat-footed. You have the decision to say, hey, I want to go left, I want to go right. TJ's a guy that sort of likes knowing where he's going and then can sort of make cuts off of that. And so when you create sort of that downhill running style for TJ, he knows he's going right or he's going left. And then I got to dig my, cleats into the ground, make a first cut, and then be patient and then make that second cut. So I thought there was just such tremendous flow last night in the running game, something that has been missing the whole year, Will. I mean, the running game felt like Buster Douglas against Mike Tyson in Vegas in 1991. I mean, It was unbelievable to see. But as Bruin fans, as Bruin faithful, keep an eye now. I think we're going to see Garbers a lot more under center with this outside zone run because I think it just opens up so many variants. And then the other variant, Will, that we saw late in the game on 3rd and short is, you fake it, in one direction and then you pitch it in that other direction, right? So you've got the jet sweep, you've got play action, you've got misdirection with the pitch. All of that opens up with this outside zone concept under center that really led UCLA to this victory and allowed them to really control this game.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of two factors on why Bieniemy has improved. One, just the offensive line is in such a better place from when they started the season. Like, to put Garbers under center, he now has faith that the offensive line can provide the protection that we just were not seeing through about 6 weeks of football when it came to UCLA. So, I mean, just that element is allowing Bieniemy to be much more creative with the playbook. And I just want to give a shout out to TJ Harden. It's been an up and down journey for the kid. We kind of tabbed him as Deshaun Foster's next NFL running back, because when Foster was an NFL running back, or at least a coach at, UCLA, he put 4 running backs into the NFL, whether it was Charbonnet, whether it was Demetric Felton, whether it was Joshua Kelly. That was his calling card. He was great at doing that. And Harden looked like the next in line. And just how physical of a runner he is in the open field, his toughness, I think, is underrated. You don't hear a lot about it. But a lot of those plays, he's making cuts. He's stiff-arming some of these Iowa defenders. I mean, you want to talk about, grown man strength. I think of Iowa football when I think of that. They're blocking, they're tackling, they're doing the little things well. TJ Harden was the best running back on that field last night with Caleb Johnson, who in all likelihood has already sealed his spot as, all Big Ten first-team running back last night. So shout out to TJ, shout out to Bieniemy, shout out to the offensive line, man. Just a lot of great stuff going on for UCLA.
And Will, the last thing I'll say there is just quickly, their ability to finish runs last night was so great. Even the runs that were 1 yard, 2 yards, 3 yards, you just saw a running back room that wanted to finish every run. And there were so many of those runs where you saw a secondary and a tertiary effort where it took an extra Iowa guy, to sort of end that play, where you saw lunges where they were trying to sort of break through. And even TJ in the red zone there, Will, on one of those cutbacks where he almost broke it for the touchdown. I just saw that there was a tenacity as well. It was offensive line development. I think it was play calling scheme. And then there was just sort of a tenacity and an attitude that we have yet to see from this team. And it's so wonderful to see it this late in the season. This team just continues to grow, to your point.
Yeah. And I mean, what does it say that every one of our 3 running backs averaged 5 yards a carry or more last night? That is a huge improvement from where we were at. To kind of put it on the flip side, man, we knew about the Iowa rush offense. We knew how talented they were. Caleb Johnson, came to this game, arguably the runner-up to this point to the great Ashton Jeanty in the Doak Walker Award rankings right now. I mean, UCLA shut down this run game in a way that was, insane to watch in person. You and I were kind of just looking at each other like, what the hell is going on out here? We're usually the team that, we can't run the ball. We're running the ball this game. We're shutting down their run offense in a lot of regards. And it comes down to the fearsome foursome. The 4 guys that I believe are going to be NFL bound from this Bruins defense, man. Jay Toia, the stats will never back it up. I think he had 4 or 5 tackles in this game. But my God, he was blowing up each and every single play to a level that it made impossible for Iowa's run game to really get going to the level that they wanted to. And Toia, I mean, I think he may have moved himself into a day 2 pick with what he's doing. We called him the most indispensable player in the offseason. He's clearly living up to that hype right there and how he's setting up the guys behind him to make plays. Olafemi Oladeja, man. We finally have seen his peak, and, he learned the position of edge now. My God, was he a wrecking ball for this Iowa offense last night. 2 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss. Femi was all over the field, and you could feel how scared the quarterbacks were at Iowa. They got 2 guys in there last night, Sullivan and the backup. And when they heard footsteps, they would have to just roll out of the pocket because they were frightened of what Femi was doing and what he was bringing to the table. Kane Medrano just led the team in tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, had that big fumble recovery within the game that kept momentum on UCLA's side. And my goodness, man, Carson Schweschinger, what can't this guy do on the football field? We've been marveling at his ability to, make plays behind the line of scrimmage, getting a lot of tackles to stifle this run game. And he did that. But 2 game-changing interceptions on Iowa last night. These 4 guys are all NFL bound. And we talked about it last night. How many teams have 4 legit NFL guys in their front 7? Not many. Talk to me about this defense and what they did to this Iowa run game, because this might be one of the most underrated stories in college football this week.
Well, I mean, you said it so well in terms of setting these 4 up, and you're absolutely right. I mean, think about this. Outside of Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, I'm not sure there's a team, maybe Alabama. I'm not sure there's a team with 4 legitimate NFL guys in the front 7. I mean, think about that for a second in terms of what these 4 guys have done. The change to Femi at edge has been a game changer, because what it has done is it's sort of the equivalent of, old school basketball where you've got a great post player on one block and you got a great post player now on another block, and it just sort of opens up the three guys on your perimeter. Toia is just such a suck of, offensive line resources. He's always going to command a double team. You always have to worry about where he is. You always have to scheme against him. It doesn't show up in the stats, but where it does show up is on the field in terms of impact. His ability, Will, to blow up his assignment, get in the running back lanes of an offense and turn plays into -2 and -3 yard losses before they even get off the ground is really what's so significant about Toia. So what teams were able to do at the start of the year was just run away from Toia, right? You sort of just run away from him, take your chances on the other side of the interior and on the other side of the edge. Now moving Femi from linebacker, particularly sort of you exploring middle linebacker to edge, now you can't do that because you got two monsters now on each side of the line, and guys like Schlesinger and Medrano can sort of pick their spots on which gap they want to attack. Do you want A gap, B gap, C gap off of those two individuals? And I thought both of them, it's almost sort of, we talk so much, Will, about thunder and lightning from a running back standpoint. This is almost thunder and lightning on the defensive line when you talk about Toia and Oladipo, and the Oladipo line, Will, as you said, I mean, the 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss.
Unreal.
I mean, that's a humongous number in a game and just totally disrupted everything that Iowa wanted to do. Will, Iowa came into this game averaging 233 yards rushing. As the leading run team in the Big Ten, they were held to 80 yards last night, Will. I mean, it was 1/3. I mean, it was 1/3 of their average. Caleb Johnson, to your point, who any other year besides Ashton Genty is the runaway Doak Walker Award winner, is going to be, without Genty, one of the 5 guys that's sitting in the Heisman room in December as one of the 5 finalists. He had 18 carries for 49 yards, Will. There were only 3 plays where he ran for more than 5 yards, and 2 of them were at the end of the first half when UCLA was playing a prevent. Yeah. Defense, think about that for a second. In a situation where UCLA was kind of playing defense straight up, Caleb Johnson only had 1 rush for more than 5 yards. It was absolutely incredible to see. And then, Will, we have to talk about Schlesinger. I mean, this guy, Captain Schwess, they're calling him, Captain America, they're calling him. The 2 interceptions was absolutely staggering, Will. And I think what it shows is, we talked about this now. This is 2 consecutive weeks where a linebacker has made an interception. And we talked last week about how much this defense confused Raiola. And it was the same story with Sullivan. He ended up getting benched. When you are getting intercepted by your linebackers, it shows you're not seeing the field. You're not seeing passing lanes. You're not seeing progressions, down the field. You're not seeing plays develop because there's so much confusion on the field. And what Schlesinger was able to do, Will, just the ball skills to be able to catch those balls, stay on his feet, bring the ball all the way back. He has been absolutely remarkable. I think right now, pound for pound, he is the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, I think it's hard to sort of argue with the performance of what Schlesinger has meant. I'm so proud of him, Will, as a fellow Samueli School of Engineering alumni. Yeah. He's a biomedical engineer, walk-on. I mean, just incredible. And then Medrano, Will. I mean, you said it best. The 2 tackles for loss, half a sack, and then just ripping that ball out of Sullivan and leading to sort of these 3 turnovers. That was this sort of flurry, Will, in the second quarter off of the 17 points. This was such a dominant effort defensively, Will. I mean, you're talking about 415 yards offensively for UCLA, only 235 yards given up defensively for UCLA. And really, we have to understand that the vast majority of Iowa's plays, it was really 2 plays for 92 yards. I mean, you take those 2 plays away, this team is in the 160s, in the 150s of total offense. It really was the 2 deep balls to Gill, one on the sudden change on the Garb's first interception, and then one again on the sudden change on the second Garb's interception in the end zone, where Iowa just sort of went deep to Jacob Gill both times, one for 39 yards, the other one for 32 yards, the other one for 59 yards. Outside of that, Will, this was a comprehensive defensive shutdown here. They did it to Nebraska. They did it now to Iowa. This defense is balling out, and this is the bread and butter of this team, Will. And think about what this has led to. We talked about all of the offensive statistics. We talked about the defensive statistics. UCLA ran 74 plays last night, Will, compared to Iowa's 46. 74-46.
Dominated
Time of possession, Will. 37 and a half minutes for UCLA. 22 and a half minutes for Iowa. Again, this was a comprehensive performance. They're able to stop the run. They're able to run the ball no matter how much the game changes. Those two truths, as long as they hold, you're going to be a dominant team moving forward.
And I want to ask you this because we've heard about it. Lincoln Riley, famously of all people, came out and said this, where he wants to make his schedule easier at the start of the season. He wanted to kind of avoid the tough-notch competition. We didn't know Indiana was going to be Indiana, but we did know that the Oregon, Penn State, LSU slate was already the toughest three-game stretch, and you had Indiana in that. I think we are winning right now because of how tough the competition was in the beginning of the season. Like, the preparation it took to get to that level, they saw firsthand. They felt the pain of those losses, and they put in the work. And, I mean, just this unit, man, let's talk about it. Kay Medrano, a lot of people don't even know this, came in as a wide receiver at UCLA.
Yeah.
He's just a freak athlete at the linebacking position making plays. Femi's naturally a linebacker. He's switching to defensive end to help the team out. Schwessinger, best story in college football. And I'll do you one better. Probably his top competition for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year was on the other sideline last night in Jay Higgins, and he severely outplayed him. So I'm thinking Schwessinger, if you look on the tape and he finishes the last 3 games of the season, he's got it. I think he's going to be Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Toia was looking at other options.
It's such a great point. I got to give a shout out to Steve Siki, my guy who's given comments. Steve and I go way back. Steve, love you. Thanks so much for supporting the show. And it was great seeing you last week and excited to see you soon again. Will, I think your point about the schedule is absolutely significant because what this team went through in terms of this 4 gauntlet. I mean, people are talking about it on Twitter now all over the place. I mean, you're talking about national media. You're talking about guys like Matt Leinart on Fox. You're talking about all these kind of folks are saying that 4-game stretch, Will, where you're talking about Indiana, LSU, Oregon, Penn State. Will, I mean, if LSU beats Bama tonight, you're talking about 4 of the 12 in the playoff. You're talking about 33% of the playoff field that this team had to play 4 games in a row. So we can talk all we want, Will, about the Iowas and the Nebraskas and going at Washington and playing the rivalry game against SC. Nothing is going to scare this team based on what they went through there. And, we talk about it so much. Well, iron sharpens iron. The preparation they received with that gauntlet of a schedule, to me, is what is propelling them moving forward. Now, having said that, in an ideal world, Will, you probably want maybe 2 or 3 of those games and not 4, right? Because you want to be able to get to the other side of that kind of long-term, historically, with the shot at the playoff, right? I mean, think about this team. If they were able to sort of get through that gauntlet with 2 losses as opposed to 4, and were able to sort of run the table from there on out, you're talking about a legit playoff team. I mean, there's no question about it in the Big Ten. So I completely agree with you that this schedule is what has propelled this team moving forward. In the future, let's hope that we could maybe just 1 less game. One less game. Let's make it maybe 3 in a row like it, or maybe 3 in 5 weeks or something to that end. But your point is absolutely spot on, because how many times, Will, do we see teams that go 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, with this sort of cream puff schedule and then completely collapse? Look, a great example of that, Will, was 2023 USC. Everyone forgets 6-0. The combined record of those teams that they played was something like 10-21 at the time. Then they got into real competition and they completely collapsed. We see it every year with teams, where they're sort of the darlings of September. We saw it with Colorado last year. Every year there's teams that sort of jump out because of a soft schedule. And then once they get into the meat of conference, they really struggle. This was in reverse. And the fact that they were able to get on the other side of it, Will, still together. Again, in this day and age, how easy would it have been at 1-5 for everyone to go their separate ways? For a first-year coach who's never even been a coordinator to completely lose his locker room, the fact that Deshaun was able to keep this team together and go on this run, it is absolutely significant, Will. And I'll say one more thing. If this team finishes with 3 wins in a row, Deshaun Foster should be runner-up for Big Ten Coach of the Year. We know it's Cignetti. Cignetti's got it's a done deal there. After Cignetti, think about it, Will. Ryan Day's at Ohio State. We know Ohio State's going to be good. Lanning is at Oregon. We know Oregon is going to be good. Franklin is doing Franklin things, winning all the games he's supposed to, losing all the games, that really sort of matter. If you look at the landscape of the Big Ten, I believe if this team finishes 7-5, Deshaun Foster, for the coaching job that he has done after this 1-5 start, should be runner-up for Big Ten Coach of the Year.
I completely agree, man. And I think if we do the clean sweep, for the rest of the regular season, this is a shot to be my favorite UCLA team ever. Because, starting 1-5, and I brought up that schedule just to make a point. Like, I think in today's society, people run away from challenges. They don't want to face things head on. I'm proud of this team because, man, they had every reason to fold at 1-5. You and I certainly didn't think they were going to make a bowl game at 1-5. We were trying to be realistic. But just the toughness of this team, how much they care. I mean, that's what makes sports great, is when you're counted out, the chips are against you, and you rally to the occasion and get out there and play some of your best football this late in the season. I mean, come on. This is Disney stuff right here, what we're seeing from this team, led by a walk-on on defense, like new coaching staff that nobody believed in. And the reason I say I like playing those teams is because I don't want to be in a society where you're scared of to face your problems and challenges. You know what I mean? This is what this country was built on, is going after your challenges, facing these problems. And I think UCLA, the schedule was tough, but look how tough this team looks because of that tough schedule.
Absolutely, Will. So well said, and again, it's through that resilience. See, Will, here's the other piece to that point, because you said it so well. Everybody talks about culture. It's really easy to build a culture in the good times. It's really easy to talk culture in the off season. It's really easy to talk culture with the press. Culture is defined not in your good times, but in your challenging times. And the fact that this team was able to not only fortify their culture, but enhance it through a 1-5 start, that's when this thing is really tight-knit. And the one thing that can allow you to overcome some of the inherent challenges of college football today, whether it is NIL is growing more and more, whether it is sort of the rev share with the student athletes that makes the schools needing to put even more resources, whether it is sort of the facilities, whether it is for UCLA, the fact that the stadium is 26.3 miles away from campus. The one thing, Will, that can allow this program to overcome all of that is a true culture and a true identity. We see it in every other sport. What's the Chiefs culture? What's the Warriors culture? We see it over and over. What's the Celtics culture? What's the Miami Heat culture? We have seen it time and again, Will. What's the Baltimore Ravens culture? The teams that are perennially great teams are not always necessarily the flashiest ones, but they know exactly what their identity is. And Deshaun Foster is building a culture not just for 2024, but for one that is sustainable in the long term. And so this is the time, Will, to get on the wagon here. This team, Will, is going 7-5. Okay, they are going to run this table and really put a dent into a lot of team schedules moving forward. We're just at the beginning.
Tip of the iceberg, man. And let's highlight some other players too. I mean, please. Logan Loya. I mean, this is a guy that the first 3 or 4 games we were genuinely confused. He was not in the rotation, was last year's reception leader. This guy has felt like he's played football at UCLA for 2 presidential terms. He's been here forever. He's a veteran, one of the fan favorites. And in a game that we sorely needed him, Matavao, who has been as reliable as an option at tight end as there has been, was out this game. J. Michael Sturdivant, a guy that you want in your corner in battles like this against a very tested Iowa defense, was out. The Iowa defense essentially knew where the ball was going because if you look at the catches compared to the rest of the team, Loya outnumbered everyone in receiving yards, touchdowns, pass attempts towards him, and he delivered. He was unbelievable in this game. 7 catches, 94 yards, had that great touchdown to put UCLA up 17-10. Loya is just a veteran of UCLA culture. And, in a season where I thought we wouldn't get to see the best of him, he's peaking at the right time for UCLA football and is a huge reason we got the job done last night. Do you mind talking about the senior leader of this wide receiver room, Logan Loya, and what he brings to this team?
No question about it, Will. And, you set up the stage so well. I mean, think about the weapons that were missing last night. You talked about Matavel, J-Mike. Look, Flores has been out since week 3.
Yeah.
We talk about this sort of receiving room. Loya himself was banged up. Will, he was questionable, with the ankle. He came out early. Everyone was wondering what was going to happen. Harden was questionable in terms of how he was going to play. And the fact that Harden played as well as he did, and the fact that Loya led this team through the air, it's absolutely significant. Will, that's why we were so surprised in spring ball when kind of the rotation came out and we were like, wow, Loya is not even a starter. Last year's leading receiver can't even make the starting 3 with the receivers. And so is this team really that deep and that talented in the skill positions, which they are? But, Will, you can't teach that ability, that instinct, and that knack of understanding defenses, knowing how to get open. And, he's got that element. They're obviously different players, different stages of their career, different statures. But there's a lot of Loya that reminds me of Cooper Kupp. That he just sort of understands defenses and he understands pain points and weaknesses in those schematics, and he just knows how to get open. And Will, I'm so happy that he got an opportunity to succeed here. This is now back-to-back years with homecoming where Logan Loya has absolutely balled out. We recall last year against Prime and Shador in Colorado, that spectacular catch he made down the sideline. And now here, to your point, Will, the 5 grabs, the 94 yards, the touchdown.
Utah game a couple years ago.
Exactly, the Utah game on the crosser. This is what Logan Loya is. He should. Now, here's another barometer, right, that we're talking about for this team to get to 7-5. The fearsome foursome, like we talked about, got to keep doing their thing. We have to stay balanced offensively from a pass run perspective. But the third element is this team will get to 7-5 if Logan Loya ends up becoming the leading receiver. And right now, he is second on the team in receptions. He's second on the team in yards, and he's leading the team in touchdowns. He needs to get the UCLA receiving triple crown. If he gets the UCLA receiving triple crown, Will, this team is going to finish 7-5. He is that security blanket for Garbs. And I think Garbs is starting to understand the value of Loya in this system. I think what happens sometimes is, in the offseason, Will, you work out with the guy, and then he kind of becomes your favorite target, right? Like we see this in football, we see it in basketball. And I think Garbs and TMA worked out so much together in the spring that it became this sort of chemistry with TMA. And TMA was phenomenal too last night. That great touchdown grab and the game clinching play on 3rd and 7 to sort of close it up. But I think sometimes when you have built such strong chemistry with one receiver, you sometimes forget the strengths and the abilities of everybody else. And I think at the start of the year, Garbs almost forgot how good Logan Loya was. And it took that bye week. And again, that bye week was so significant where he took a step back and said, okay, what do I really have in my receiving room? How do I need to change my approach? How do we need to sort of just change this offense altogether? And lo and behold, look who comes back. It's Logan Loya. He's going to have another great finish to this season, Will. He's going to be the leading receiver again. And Logan Loya, like we talked about, Will, with a couple guys in the past, Logan Loya is going to make an NFL team very, very happy next year because of his ability to get open. He's the prototypical slot NFL receiver, the guy who's going to eat up yards and really keep your chains moving. Logan Loya has a very bright future, and I couldn't be happier for him.
Man, 2 more shout-outs before we get out of here and a question. Mateen Begani, the 57-yarder field goal attempt. Hadn't hit one over 50 all year long, and to hit that 57-yarder, you're down 10-0. You need to get something breaking your way. I felt that field goal really sparked UCLA completely. No one was expecting that field goal to drop. I was kind of like, maybe a punt here would be a little bit more justified. But when you bang out a 57-yarder, which is long for NFL kickers, that to me signified we got something brewing here tonight. And lo and behold, a 20-17 victory kind of goes out. I also want to shout out Garbers and ask you a question on this because the first half was very rough. No one's going to deny that. 2 turnovers in the red zone, 3 total. Garbers has this kind of ability where he can kind of get out of control at times. We saw it in the opener last year against Coastal Carolina. We've seen it at different scenarios where if it's not flowing, it takes him a while to get going. But to his credit, he really bounced back in a nice way. That second half, turnover-free football, sealed the game, had some nice running options there. Shout out to Garbers. But is this a point in time where you think this could be detrimental to UCLA if he does get in kind of one of those zones? Because, man, it was not looking good in the first half for a lot of it. And these are coming from two Garbers supporters on this show that really love and appreciate what he brings to the table.
Yeah, no, great question, Will. And I'll start with Pagani. You're so right. I mean, Pagani, 57 in college is insane. Okay, yeah. First of all, 57 in college, not outdoor, not indoor, natural grass at that point at night, Will, when the air is heavy. I mean, to have sort of the confidence to be able to do that was significant. And you were spot on, because to that point, it was 10-0. It was back-to-back interceptions by Garbs. UCLA moved the ball a little bit with the ground game, but the offense sort of stalled out. Garbers got flushed out of the pocket the previous two plays, had to throw the ball away. Iowa's pass rush was starting to really kind of feel it a little bit. UCLA was getting a little bit predictable in terms of their offense. Sitting at the 40-yard line, you're thinking, okay, maybe we just pin them deep. Let's sort of reset. We kick that field goal, Will. It becomes 10-3, but there was just such an injection of juice in the stadium. And then the very next play, Will, was the Schlesinger first interception. And then the domino really started en route to the 17 points. So Pagani was sensational. Then we tried it again in the third quarter with a 56. He just missed it. Missed it. It was almost there. But the fact that there's so much confidence. And I think for UCLA fans, look, I mean, you and I talked about this, Will. You get it to the 35, and you get it to 52. I mean, Pagani is going to be able to drill that pretty consistently. So that also opens things up for you from an offensive standpoint in critical situations moving forward. So Pagani was sensational. Will, you ask a very deep question with Garbers. And I think here's where I see it. Look at the two moments, really, where Garbers has struggled. At moments in this season, really struggled in the opener against Hawaii, and then really struggled last night. And there was a ton of parallels, right, to both of those games. Both games, we fell behind 10-0. Both games, he had some crippling interceptions in the end zone. What was the common denominator in both of those situations? Against Hawaii, after the game, he said, I was trying to do too much. I needed to just stick to the game plan. And I played beyond myself because I was so hyped to start this season and kind of felt like we really needed to score a lot of points early and really elevate. And he played outside of himself. And then last night, Will, coming off of, I think, the two really dynamic performances, a Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, and then being so efficient on the road, I think he was sort of playing above his weight a little bit and playing outside of the script. And I think that's where last night, I think, will be a really nice learning experience for Garbers, is that, and I don't mean this in a negative way in any way, shape, or form, he is a phenomenal system quarterback, but I think he's got to stick to the offensive principles and the system. He has to stay within the structure. It's almost like, Will, when you've got a really nice sports car and you're driving on Pacific Coast Highway and the speed limit says, 55 or 60 or 65, and you're driving the speed limit, and then you drive slightly more, and you're just to kind of test out the car, and you're like, man, this is great, but there's no cops around, so you're like, okay, maybe I can drive even faster, and then you get pulled over by the cops. Ethan Garbers has gotten pulled over twice now, over the course of this season. I think he's got to realize, listen, I'm really good when I'm driving the speed limit. I'm really good when I'm inside the structure of this offense. So hopefully that resets him over these last three games, because I agree with you. If he tries to play outside of himself and get sort of improvisational, the way DTR used to, or the way Caleb Williams did across town, that's sort of a recipe for disaster. He needs to stick to his two reads, ball out, two reads, or just run and really stay within the confines of that tempo. And moving forward, UCLA should be great. And Will, the last thing I'll say before we kick it over to you and close it up, if you look at the landscape of the Big Ten, this version of UCLA, post-bye over the last 3 weeks, this is the fifth best team in the conference. If you take away the four that are vying for the playoff, right? Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, UCLA is the fifth best team in the Big Ten. And frankly, if we were only able to close that Minnesota game, we would be sitting at 5th in the standings in the Big Ten. Okay. So, that one we're still sort of angry about that we let that one go. But this version of UCLA, the post-bye version of UCLA, I believe would beat Minnesota, and I believe would beat any other team in the Big Ten outside of those 4. We are sitting on a team, Will, that is the 5th best team in the conference, in my opinion, right now.
I'll take it a step further. If we have this current iteration right now, we beat Penn State at their place. We beat Penn State. We made it close with a backup. What was it, 28-10? If you have this with a run game, an offensive line that's gelling, Femi playing the edge as he's playing it, Schwessinger, he's always been good, but he's like turning up to another level right now in a lot of regards. I think we beat Penn State. I'll be honest. We were tied
I don't doubt it.
LSU too. So we got to throw that out there as well. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. Man, shout out to Mateen. Woke up in a new Bugatti. I mean, we love this kid, man. The kicker, that's the jersey. We had no special teams last year whatsoever. So just to have a guy that can drill a 57-yarder in a game, what a blessing that is, man. But Bruin fans, it was so much fun to get out there to the Rose Bowl. We're going to need that same energy times 10 in 2 weeks when we bring in the team across town, the team we do not mention on this podcast, to the Rose Bowl. Pack it loud, pack it proud. You guys have a great rest of your Saturday victory week, and don't sleep on Washington. This is the classic trap game. We got to lock in for this game as well. We're going to have a preview going on as well. Thank you, guys. Shout out to Kermit. You guys have a good one.